Good morning. Thank you for watching Army Shakil 5858. I'm Amir. Warning of the news which have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian channels and AFP, AP and Reuters news agencies. Now the headlines. Veterans, world leaders remember D-Day. Israeli strikes in central Gaza killed 27 Palestinians. Russia is ready to use nuclear weapons after American decision to give weapons to Ukraine. President Biden and Mr. Trump are closing in for their party's nominations. Boeing Starliner liftoff from Cape Canaveral. A shootout at U.S. Embassy in Beirut. Thousands of ultra-nationalist Israelis took part in a parade. Russian naval exercises in Caribbean. Hunter Biden case, bird flu in Mexico. Contraceptive Act. UN says earth temperatures are rising. Interest rate of Canada Central Bank. Ottawa Confidential. Women and Second World War. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrial, S&P 500 and Nasdaq all went up. Now the news in detail.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The American Civil Liberties Union has threatened to sue President Biden over his new executive order temporarily shutting down the U.S.-Mexico border and suspending protections for asylum seekers. ACLU attorney Lee Gallant said, quote, "It was illegal when Trump did it, and it's no less illegal now," unquote. The ACLU warned Biden's executive order will put thousands of lives at risk. Biden announced the new policy at the White House Tuesday.
This action will help us gain control of our border, restore order into the process. This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying
It's hard to all migrants we see in the world attempting to cross into the United States.
We'll have more on this story later in the broadcast. In India, final results from the world's largest ever election show Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi appears to have secured a third term in office, but in a shocking development, his Hindu nationalist BJP party has lost its outright parliamentary majority. The BJP won 240 seats in the Indian parliament, down from over 300 in the last election. The BJP will now have to align with smaller parties to form a government to keep Modi in power. The opposition coalition, known as India, exceeded all expectations by winning 232 seats. Opposition leader Rahul Gandhi said, quote, "This is a huge message to Mr. Narendra Modi," unquote. Israel's killed at least 75 Palestinians in Gaza over the past 24 hours as Israeli forces attacked the Barij and Al-Maghazi refugee camps in central Gaza. Israeli strikes also killed 8 Palestinian police officers in Deir al-Balah on Tuesday. One Palestinian official accused Israel of deliberately killing police officers in an effort to spread chaos in Gaza. During an interview with Time magazine, President Biden was asked if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was prolonging the war for his own political self-preservation. Biden responded by saying, quote, "There is every reason for people to draw that conclusion," unquote. A U.S. Army officer who resigned to protest the Biden administration's Gaza policies has spoken publicly for the first time. In an interview with CBS News, Major Harrison Mann, who worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, criticized Israel's war on Gaza.
They were dropping 6,000 bombs a day. They were burning through munitions, exhausting their supply. It was very easy to link our support, which I was part of, to the killing in Gaza.
What bothered this intelligence officer specializing in the Middle East the most? His view that the Israelis were targeting Palestinian civilians indiscriminately and that U.S. weapons made it possible.
Were the Israelis using American weapons against civilians in Gaza? I can say almost certainly yes, but were they doing so intentionally? I don't know how you kill 35,000 civilians by accident.
Major Harrison Mann was interviewed by CBS News' Jim Axelrod. In news from Washington, the Republican-led House has voted to sanction International Criminal Court officials for seeking arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The bill calls for sanctions against anyone involved in ICC investigations of Americans or U.S. allies that are not ICC members. The final vote, 247 to 155, with 42 Democrats joining Republicans. The bill heads to the Senate, where it's not expected to pass. The New York Times is reporting the Israeli government's been running a secret online campaign to influence and target U.S. lawmakers and the public to generate more support for its war on Gaza. The Times reports Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs allocated $2 million for the operation, which has been carried out by an Israeli marketing firm called Stoic. Last week, the social media company Meta shut down hundreds of fake accounts set up by Stoic. The Times reports the campaign focused in part on black Democratic lawmakers, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock. The covert operation also created fake accounts on the platform X and set up 3 fake English-language news sites. Human Rights Watch has condemned Israel for repeatedly firing incendiary white phosphorus shells into southern Lebanon over the past 8 months. The group's verified white phosphorus attacks on 17 municipalities, including 5 towns where the shells struck populated residential areas. Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health says the attacks have injured at least 173 people. In election news, Congressmember Andy Kim has won New Jersey's closely watched Democratic Senate primary. Kim won 75% of the vote. Progressive think tank director Patricia Campos Medina placed second with 16%, and the longtime activist Larry Hamm won 9%. On the Republican side, Curtis Bashaw defeated Christine Serrano-Glasner, who'd been endorsed by Trump. The New Jersey Senate seat is currently held by Democrat Robert Menendez, who's currently on trial for corruption centered on bribes tied to the Egyptian and Qatari governments. Last week, Senator Menendez filed papers to run for re-election as an independent. Menendez's son, Democratic Congressmember Rob Menendez, won his primary House race in New Jersey. Meanwhile, Joe Biden won the New Jersey Democratic presidential primary Tuesday, but nearly 9% of voters chose uncommitted. In many areas of New Jersey, the ballot line read, quote, uncommitted, justice for Palestine, permanent ceasefire now, unquote. Attorney General Merrick Garland testified on Capitol Hill Tuesday and decried what he called the, quote, unprecedented and unfounded attacks against the Department of Justice. Republican lawmakers are threatening to hold Garland in contempt for refusing to turn over audio recordings of President Biden's interview with special counsel Robert Hur. A transcript of the interview has already been made public. Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee grilled Garland about that case, as well as the criminal prosecutions of Donald Trump. Garland defended the agency's actions.
I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated. We will continue to do our jobs free from political influence, and we will not back down from defending democracy.
Ukraine has reportedly attacked Russian soil for the first time using a U.S.-made artillery system. This comes just days after the Biden administration gave Ukraine the green light to carry out such attacks despite warnings from Russia. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is criticizing Biden for deciding not to attend an upcoming peace summit in Switzerland. Vice President Kamala Harris will attend instead. Biden, however, is expected to meet with Zelensky this week in Normandy, France, and again at the G7 summit in Italy. In the Mexican state of Michoacan, the mayor of Cotija was killed in an ambush Monday. Yolanda Sanchez Figueroa was walking home when she and her bodyguards were shot by assailants in a van. Sanchez's murder came shortly after Claudia Sheinbaum made history as the first woman elected president in Mexico's history. This year's election campaign was one of the most violent in Mexico. Gender violence was a central issue. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the International Committee of the Red Cross has suspended food distributions to people displaced by conflict as fighting between the Congolese army and M23 fighters intensifies. Violence has been spreading to Kanyabayonga, a town in the eastern DRC where tens of thousands of people have fled seeking shelter. About 7 million people have been internally displaced, with humanitarian aid groups describing this as one of the world's largest displacement crises. In election news, Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul has filed felony charges against Trump campaign attorney Kenneth Chesebro and 2 other men for their role in attempting to overthrow the 2020 election by appointing fake electors to the Electoral College. Chesebro is also facing criminal charges in Georgia. And opening arguments were heard Tuesday in the federal gun trial of Hunter Biden, who's the first child of a sitting president to ever face a criminal trial. Hunter Biden is accused of illegally purchasing a gun at a time when he was using drugs. On Tuesday, prosecutors played audio recordings of Hunter Biden reading the audiobook of his memoir about his struggle with an addiction to crack cocaine. Biden's lawyer, Abby Lowell, said Biden did not, quote, knowingly lie about his drug use when filing forms to purchase the gun. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome.
Hi. Kamala shows her face on the show in last place. Kamala Harris brings us our video of the day. She joined Jimmy Kimmel Live and weighed in on Trump's verdict. Roll the tape, Elaine.
The jury made their decision. And, you know, I think that the reality is cheaters don't like getting caught. And being held accountable. You know, the reality is, let's just fast forward to, again, November. I think the American people want to know that there is a president who believes they are accountable to the people.
And who's allowed to travel overseas?
And also a president who the people can count on, right?
Yeah, Biden is a president people can count on to croak in the next 6 months. I mean, at least Trump was fit to stand trial. Biden is not fit to stand. Kimmel also asked Kamala the hard-hitting questions.
Are you aware that there is a strain of cannabis named after you, Kamala Kush? Did you know that? Really? Yeah.
Seriously?
Seriously, for real.
I did not know that.
You didn't know it? They didn't even send you any?
No.
Have you ever been bitten by the president's dog?
No.
No? Okay, all right. Who curses more, you or Joe Biden?
That's one of the national secrets.
That's one of the secrets.
So, her own line of pot. And that's a good idea for her, because the people who smoke pot will soon forget that she was known for arresting people who smoke pot. But it'll backfire when they realize the cost of munchies. Period. Kaylee. Oh, thank you. I didn't expect that applause, but I'll take it. You know, Kaylee, you're thinking about how does that help? Like they're trying to rebrand her, no question. But does that do any good?
No. Look, every political communications person wants their boss to be likable. You know, but before you approach likability, you have to have respectability. You have to be respected before you even go about trying to be liked. She has to earn back respect before she even goes about trying to be liked. But they have her out on this tour. I was very interested, though, in the verdict.
Yeah.
Biden had a choice, lean into the verdict or stay out. She went further than her boss in talking about the cheater. Biden, the most he said is in a closed-door fundraiser. And just so they know, hours ago, Quinnipiac came out with the first poll we have, credible poll since the verdict was out. Trump's still winning Georgia by 5 points.
Wow.
And independents are more likely to vote for him rather than less. So bad news for lean in. Voters are saying, we're leaning into Trump, not into you.
America loves the outlaw.
Yeah.
That's why I hold on to my chaps.
Looking at you.
I'm looking at you.
Yeah, you're not supposed to hold on to them.
You know, I bet that pot stuff must piss you off.
It's just for that not to come up at all. I mean, I guess it's like a comedy. It's supposed to be like a fun vibe. He could have at least kind of razzed her about it a little bit. I mean, I feel it's pretty common knowledge that she was like a tough on weed cop.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, weed, that's so funny. Like he should have had something prepared for that.
No.
I don't know. I think it's I think it's always kind of weird to see these kind of interviews. It's fine, but if you're gonna have fun with it, you have to at least have her be able to take a joke too.
Yeah, rib her a little bit.
Yeah.
This is the funniest presidential pair in history, and this guy's acting like a suck-up hairstyle.
People are going to people say it's a softball interview. Yes, Jimmy Kimmel Live is supposed to be a softball interview. It's supposed to be like, well, tell me what happened, but like you can at least make some jokes at her expense, just like you do with any random actor or actress.
Yeah, he should have brought out the trampoline from the Man Show, right? Not surprised, Tyrus. He said he asked her if she was the secret weapon for 2024.
Not much of a secret. Look, they're playing that old Democratic playbook that used to work back when like Bill Clinton was running. He had his moment on, I think it was the Tonight Show, where he played the saxophone.
Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, he played the saxophone in Arsenio Hall, and it was like that was his defining moment. All of a sudden, he was humanized, and everybody was like, "Man, Bill Clinton's cool." And it changed. It helped him in the election. The difference is, one, you have to be on, and at the time, Arsenio was #1.
Yeah.
So you got to do the #1 show first of all, which means you have to come here, and you have to, and you have to talk with this guy. And I don't think those would be the questions that would come in. And the thing is she didn't have a moment that you really get. She didn't have a great line. She didn't say nothing clever. It was just blah. And listen, having weed named after you, I got 7. It means nothing. Okay? The bottom line in this election comes down to just very simple thing. She did mention the whole the preceding thing, the court thing, the conviction, all that backfires on them because it's very simple. Like if you could take everything out, all the personalities, all the out, it comes down to one thing. Do you want a president that can stand trial, or do you want a president that's unfit to stand trial? That's the question. That's what it comes down to.
Perfectly.
Bingo.
Perfectly. All right. Well, that was fun. I have a minute left.
We haven't talked to Jamie yet.
Oh, Jamie!
Poor Jamie.
So, Jamie.
Don't answer anything he says.
I don't know if I should be more upset that it's a bit or not a bit.
It was not a bit. I'm like going, did I forget somebody? Yo, you know what?
Wow, that's deep.
I couldn't tell. I was like,
what did you make of the interview as a whole?
Or this one.
The whole thing really did infuriate me, though. What a terrible interview. I feel like Kamal has so many softballs. I would have rather seen him just actually throw softballs at her. And then maybe one hardball now and then. But like if I was an interviewer, she says crazy things and no one ever calls her on. Like I feel like if I was an interviewer, I'd be like, oh, she says, oh, you shouldn't go to jail if you smoke weed. I feel like you got to go. What are you talking about? Right? Like you put all these people, you can't just move on. I wonder if when they play clips of Kimmel on your show, I picture all the people over there going like, oh my God, we're tied in the ratings with Godfell. Oh, it's because they're playing us.
It's weird, though. I don't fault them for their biases. I fault them for being stupid. You know what I mean? It was just a stupid interview. You could have been a little smarter, tried a little harder, But I felt like I was watching an HR employee interviewing a DEI hire. Just knowing that she's not qualified, but you just kind of got to be really nice about it.
Bro, it's not like this is her first interview and we're just finding out.
Yeah.
She's literally told us that you can see the moon with other people's eyes. She's told us that everyone loves school buses. So if you're going to have her on your show, I'm sure maybe I'm giving Kimmel too much credit here, but I'm sure they might have had 1 or 2 questions and someone said, bro, just get through it.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. Like ask her favorite color, get ready for a math answer.
Yeah. Did you notice too? Like in every interview, I feel like she hangs on to like one phrase that she says over and over. And in this one, she kept going, in reality, this is what. How about
strong?
Yeah, how about you just talk and we'll assume it's all in reality.
Yes. Yeah.
Without you clarifying.
That's funny. All right, we gotta move on. Up next are restaurants' rules to ban young fools.
That's true.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Navaz. On the NewsHour tonight, former President Trump and President Biden close in on their party's nominations despite voter concerns about a 2020 rematch.
The long-delayed Boeing Starliner finally lifts off from Cape Canaveral, beginning a new era of crewed spaceflight.
And we travel to France to meet veterans of D-Day as they prepare to mark the 80th anniversary of the Allied invasion of Normandy.
We'd known for some time, of course, what was going to happen, and we knew that we were making history.
Contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. There was a dramatic shootout at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut today. The Lebanese military says a gunman fired shots at the facility. He was then wounded during an exchange of gunfire with troops and taken to a hospital for treatment.
The army described him as a Syrian national. Lebanese officials believe he was acting alone. A guard was also wounded in the shooting. Troops were deployed to secure the area and set up checkpoints, and witnesses said the gunfire lasted for nearly half an hour.
We were at work. We heard gunfire. It didn't take a
to show a suspect wearing a black vest with the words Islamic State written in Arabic and the English initials I and S. The State Department says the embassy will reopen for business tomorrow. Thousands of ultra-nationalist Israelis took part in an annual parade in Jerusalem today to mark Israel's capture of the city in 1967. Massive crowds marched through a Palestinian area of Jerusalem, some chanting anti-Arab slogans. Some clashes between demonstrators and police broke out. Authorities say 18 marchers were arrested. In the meantime, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Israel's northern border with Lebanon. That comes a day after Hezbollah rocket attacks sparked large brush fires in the area. During a tour of a military base, Netanyahu addressed calls to ramp up Israel's response.
Yesterday, the land was burning here, but the ground was also on fire in Lebanon. Whoever thinks that he will hurt us and we will sit idly by is making a big mistake. We are prepared for a very strong action in the north. One way or another, we will restore security here.
Israel and Hezbollah have been exchanging fire for months. The fighting has displaced tens of thousands of people on both sides of the border. Hunter Biden's ex-wife and his former girlfriend took the stand at his criminal trial in Delaware today. They testified to their experiences witnessing drug use by the president's son, including the moment his then-wife found a crack pipe in an ashtray at their family's home. Hunter Biden faces 3 felony charges related to his buying a gun in 2018 while using drugs. First Lady Jill Biden has attended every day of the trial so far, but she'll travel to meet the president in France later today. Separately, House Republicans sent criminal referrals to the Justice Department today, accusing Hunter Biden and the president's brother, James Biden, of making false statements to Congress. This is part of a broader impeachment inquiry trying to tie the president to his son's business dealings. So far, Republicans have presented no evidence of wrongdoing. On Capitol Hill, the Senate rejected a bill this afternoon aimed at protecting women's access to contraception. The Right to Contraception Act fell short of the 60 votes needed to pass, with just 51 for and 39 against. Regardless of the outcome, Senate Democrats were keen to put their Republican colleagues on the record when it comes to reproductive rights ahead of the November election. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the vote achieved that goal.
Today was not a show vote. This was a show us who you are vote. And Senate Republicans showed the American people exactly who they are.
A similar vote over protecting access to in vitro fertilization is expected as soon as next week. The planet is on a 12-month streak of setting new heat records. Every month for the last year has been the hottest month ever recorded. That's according to the European Union's climate monitoring service. That comes as the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that a target of, quote, limiting long-term global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is hanging by a thread.
We are playing Russian roulette with our planet. And we need an exit ramp off the highway to climate hell.
Guterres took particular aim at fossil fuel companies, calling for a so-called windfall tax on the industry's profits. He referred to them as the, quote, godfathers of climate chaos. And on Wall Street today, stocks rose across the board on growing hopes that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates later this year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 96 points to close at 38,807. The Nasdaq jumped 330 points to close above 17,000. And the S&P 500 added 62 points, closing at a new record. And the first banknotes featuring King Charles III entered circulation in the UK today. People queued up outside the Bank of England's headquarters in London today, yes, I said queued, to be among the first to get their hands on the notes. The portrait of the king will appear on all 5, 10, 20, and 50-pound notes. He's only the second British monarch to appear on Britain's currency. The first, of course, was his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who died in September of 2022. Still to come, on the NewsHour, current and former employees warn OpenAI isn't doing enough to prevent its systems from becoming a danger to humanity. Veteran negotiator Mickey Bergman discusses his new book on the shadowy world of international hostage rescue. And an airline attendant gives his brief but spectacular take on the miracle of flight.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
While Joe Biden and Donald Trump earned enough delegates to win their respective party nominations months ago, the primary season is only now officially coming to a close. The two men swept the handful of states that voted yesterday, but both... Join us back here again tomorrow night for a special report from the beaches of Normandy, where world leaders are converging to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Amna Navaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here at the PBS NewsHour, thanks for spending part of your evening with us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
On this Wednesday night from Juno Beach in France, the lies and deception that lay behind D-Day's success.
It's an enormously complicated choreography.
The secret, elaborate military mission to fool Nazi commanders.
Back here in Canada, what went up finally comes down. How much Canada's central bank has slashed its trend-setting interest rate, and the relief for some homeowners. Ottawa Confidential. The Liberal government's refusal to answer which MPs allegedly colluded with foreign states.
And the thousands of women behind the scenes of the Second World War.
I'm so glad that I was smart enough to join.
Their little-known but vital roles in defeating the enemy.
Global National with Donna Friesen, reporting tonight from Juno Beach in France.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are on Juno Beach in Normandy, France. We take peace in Europe for granted now, but just 8 decades ago, the world was at war. The Nazis dominated Europe, and heavily armed German soldiers were dug in right here on these beaches. You can still see the bunkers. Just across the English Channel, the British, along with their Canadian and American allies, were ready to invade. And in a ceremony in Portsmouth, England today, the focus was on the few surviving British D-Day veterans.
All knew that both victory and failure were possible.
Doing top-secret work that was critical to the success of D-Day. But first, Farah Nasser is here with the rest of the day's news. Farah.
Thank you, Donna. The Bank of Canada lowered its key interest rate today for the first time in 4 years. The central bank cut its key rate by 25 basis points to 4.75%. It's a turning point for the Canadian economy. Mackenzie Gray looks at what it could signal for rates down the road.
It's what millions of Canadians,
Let's just enjoy the moment for a bit.
and the Bank of Canada governor have been waiting for.
Monetary policy no longer needs to be as restrictive, and lower the policy rate by 25 basis points to 4.75%.
After being the bad news banker for the past 2 years, Tiff Macklem is now outlining a new path.
It is reasonable to expect that there will be further cuts in interest rates, but the timing of those cuts, or of any further cuts, are going to depend on incoming data.
The key data, inflation info, which the bank hopes will continue to come down. Wednesday's cut gives relief to the 15% of Canadians with a variable rate mortgage, like Zohaib and Jim Sheikh, who will save $100 a month in interest costs.
Lower interest payments gives me more cash, like my disposable income is going to increase, so I can spend that on, let's say, a vacation or like buying stuff for my house.
But fixed rates are unlikely to drop, a key concern for the 76% of Canadian homeowners set to renew their mortgage by the end of 2026.
Longer-term interest rates have largely already built in the expectation that the Bank of Canada is going to be cutting interest rates.
Canada's now the first country in the G7 to cut interest rates post-COVID, Farah, and that trend could continue on July 24th, the next time the bank has an interest rate announcement.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thank you, Mackenzie. A cloud of suspicion is hanging over Parliament after stunning allegations some MPs are allegedly helping foreign states, which national security experts say could amount to treason. The Liberal government faced repeated questions today about whether it will reveal the names of those accused of being involved, but the chair of the parliamentary committee that released the bombshell report says his hands are tied. Sharia Isri has the details.
It's a report the Liberals really don't want to talk about. But one Liberal is speaking, David McGuinty, the chair of a parliamentary national security committee that released the damning report. Federal politicians are allegedly colluding with other countries by accepting money, revealing secrets, even meeting with a known intelligence officer of a foreign state.
We have gone as far as we can.
McGuinty says he and his colleagues can't name names because the committee is bound by Canada's official secrets law.
That means if they inadvertently reveal information, they can be prosecuted.
Conservative MP Michael Chong, whose own family was targeted by China, wants the veil of secrecy lifted.
I can't believe the following needs to be said. Parliamentarians' duty is not to a foreign state, but to the people of Canada. Simple question. Will the Prime Minister release...
And only learned about them after its release. Farah?
Sharia Isri in Ottawa. Thank you, Sharia. In Hamilton, Ontario, a children's hospital is pausing tonsil and adenoid surgeries after 2 patients in the last month died shortly after undergoing those procedures. Hamilton Health Sciences, which operates McMaster Children's Hospital, says one child died the day after surgery, while the other died 9 days after their initial procedure. The hospital network can't confirm any apparent connection between the 2 cases.
It is very unusual. This is a very rare occurrence with such a simple procedure. With that said, adverse events in hospitals, are
for anyone under the age of 18 until a review of the program is completed. The heat is on. Coming up, a warning from scientists on this World Environment Day. There's alarming new data about how fast our climate is changing. According to the European Union's Climate Monitoring Service, Earth has faced 12 straight months of record-breaking temperatures. Over the last year, the planet's average temperature was 1.63 degrees above the pre-industrial average. As Jackson Prosco reports, scientists warn the worst could be yet to come.
The heat has been relentless. From an early season heat dome in the southwestern U.S. to an unprecedented heat wave in India, where temperatures reached 50 degrees Celsius last week.
All these events have been larger, on the edge of what we think was possible.
The EU's climate monitor warns it's part of an unprecedented year-long pattern of record-breaking temperatures, alarming scientists who caution it's a preview of what's to come.
Our planet is trying to tell us something, but we don't seem to be listening.
On this World Environment Day, the UN Secretary General delivered an urgent warning and a scathing rebuke of the fossil fuel industry, who he called the godfathers of climate chaos.
We need an exit ramp off the highway to climate hell.
That hell would come by breaking past the 1.5-degree warming limit of the Paris Climate Accord in a single calendar year, which would usher in more extreme heat waves and more supercharged storms.
What is clear is that the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees C is hanging on a thread.
Scientists believe future warming can be limited with cuts to emissions. They caution there's no going back to cooler times.
From now on, in all likelihood, it would be warmer than now.
Warmer means deadlier. Last year in the U.S., more than 2,300 people were killed by excessive heat, the highest number ever recorded. This year, with heat records already falling in the late days of spring, the planet continues its path into uncharted territory, bringing with it untold misery for millions. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Surviving uncertainty ahead, one Gazan trying to stay alive in a war-torn region. Thousands of Israelis marched through the streets today to celebrate Jerusalem Day. The procession marks Israel's capture of East Jerusalem, including the Old City and its holy sites, in the 1967 Middle East War. Many Palestinians see the annual nationalist march through predominantly Arab neighborhoods as a deliberate provocation. There are reports some Palestinians were attacked today as marchers shouted death to Arabs. In southern Gaza, more than 1 million displaced people are said to be sheltering in Khan Yunis. They were forced to head to the next largest center north of Rafah after an Israeli military evacuation last month. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees says people are staying in destroyed buildings or tents. Crystal Gamansing has been in contact with a dental graduate who dreamed of opening her own clinic, but is now focused on survival.
Walking past and through the debris, Sarah Khalid heads up to her latest home, one room shared by several of her relatives on a peace plan announced last week by the U.S. president.
To be honest, the feeling of fatigue and exhaustion has become dominant in my life.
Right now, hope is a luxury that feels too indulgent for Khalid. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Unsung heroes. Next, how more than 1 million women helped turn the tide of the Second World War. And Princess Anne paid tribute in France to the loyalty, bravery, and duty of the Royal Regina Rifles. She unveiled the statue of a Second World War rifleman to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Donna will be back from Normandy next.
Welcome back to Normandy in northern France. What happened here is usually told through the stories of the men who stormed these beaches to fight German forces. But critical to their success were women. Women were barred from combat roles in the Second World War, so 1.1 million of them signed up to serve with the Western Allies and worked as codebreakers, ship plotters, radar operators, and cartographers. Without them, D-Day could not have happened.
The Germans had already taken over Europe and France and all kinds of places.
Lucille Lane didn't used to talk much about the war. Now, at age 102, she realizes the world needs to know.
So it won't have to happen again.
She was 21 when she joined the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service, the WRENS. Close to 7,000 women who played little-known but pivotal roles during the Second World War. Based at Naval Headquarters in Halifax, Lane worked in signals intelligence.
Wireless telegraphist who were picking up mostly German traffic and sending it in, and then we would direct it where it should go.
What made you want to sign up?
Oh, well, I have a boyfriend.
That boyfriend was in naval training in Britain.
And then he came over on his furlough, and he was most amazed that we were so nonchalant about the war going on.
Lane decided to do her part. She signed up as a Wren, the first time women were allowed to serve in uniform in the Canadian Navy. Their skills were critical.
Day and night, the U-boats followed the convoys in mid-Atlantic.
Hundreds of German submarines, known as U-boats, lurked beneath the North Atlantic, hunting ships in terrifying wolf packs, crippling convoys of vital food, supplies, and troops to Europe. And some of those German U-boats came very close to Canada.
Sure. Right up to St. Lawrence. You know, one ship was lost in the St. Lawrence. Imagine that.
The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous battle of the Second World War. The tactics and positions of the U-boats had to be understood and outsmarted. That meant intercepting messages encrypted by the infamous German Enigma machine. Work mostly done by women.
And their contributions directly to D-Day were enormous. Taking intelligence that was coming in about where enemy submarines or wolf packs and groups of submarines might be, and then assisting to plot or replot the routes for convoys or individual warships. In fact, Bletchley Park, the famous decoding mission, was largely run by women, as was the Canadian Naval Intelligence Unit in Halifax.
It was top secret work. Loose lips might sink ships, was the saying back then. But much time has now passed, and Lane says the lessons from the war need repeating. Can you believe that it's 80 years? We're coming up to the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Well, I can't believe I'm 102. Imagine that. Think of it. I'm 102.
It's remarkable. And when you look at that photo now, what do you see? What do you think back of that 21-year-old?
I'm so glad that I was smart enough to join up.
And you played a role.
Yeah. We stopped Hitler taking over.
That is Global National for this Wednesday from Juno Beach, France. Yesterday, we told you about the D-Day veteran interviewed in BC. Bill Cameron was packed and he was ready to come to the 80th anniversary of D-Day here, but very sadly, he passed away 8 hours before he was due to leave. Bill was 100 years old. Today at the Wargrave Cemetery near Juno Beach, the mayor acknowledged his absence.
William Bill Cameron est né le 22 janvier 1924.
And he asked those gathered to observe a minute of silence in Bill Cameron's honor. Later, as darkness fell, French school children placed lights on each of the 2,044 headstones here, a poignant vigil to those who never made it back home to Canada. Thanks for watching. We'll be back from Normandy for D-Day tomorrow.
Tonight, the historic launch. Boeing Starliner blasting off on its first long-awaited crewed mission. After years of setbacks, the moment of liftoff, Boeing Starliner carrying 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station. The mission ushering in a new era of space competition as Boeing looks to take on Elon Musk's SpaceX. Also tonight, the dangerous heat wave. More than 30 million under alerts from California to Texas, where temperatures could break records. The dramatic testimony in Hunter Biden's gun trial. His ex-wife and former girlfriend taking the stand, what they told the jury about his history of addiction, as prosecutors argue he lied on a federal form to buy a firearm. Just in the appeals court halting Donald Trump's Georgia election case amid scrutiny over DA Fani Willis. And our new reporting, the names of Mr. Trump's potential VP shortlist. The gunman attacking the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, a 30-minute-long shootout in the street before he's captured. What we're learning, was it ISIS-inspired? A deadly house explosion caught on camera, children playing in a nearby driveway, running in terror. And 80 years after they helped turn the tide of war, we're with 4 American heroes as they return to Normandy.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening.
There is breaking news about an alleged terror plot overseas where President Biden is tonight. Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We are coming on the air with this new information because police in France have arrested a suspected terrorist who was reportedly badly burned after an explosion near Paris-Charles de Gaulle Airport. President Biden and other world leaders, including Ukrainian President Zelensky, are all there gathering in France for the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. CBS's Ed O'Keefe is traveling with the president. He joins us now live from Paris. And Ed, what have we learned?
Nora, good evening. As you said, the president here now at the start of a 5-day visit to France. The Secret Service says this incident is having no effect on his movements, and the FBI is monitoring the situation. Reports say the explosion occurred Monday afternoon at a hotel near the Charles de Gaulle airport outside Paris. French prosecutors have opened the case against an unnamed 26-year-old suspect who was originally from the Russian-occupied Donbass region of Ukraine. Reports say the suspect is recovering from injuries sustained in Monday's blast and is cooperating with police. French media reports guns and false passports were also found. The incident comes ahead of the D-Day commemorations, ahead of a major military parade for the president's state visit scheduled for Saturday, and a little more than a month before the Summer Olympics begin here in Paris. Nora?
Keith, with that breaking news, thank you very much. Also, this news back here at home tonight, President Biden's only surviving son sat in a Wilmington courtroom all day with the First Lady sitting behind him as jurors heard vivid and salacious details about his addiction and alleged behavior during a period where he's facing 3 criminal charges. And they saw photos of the gun at the center of the case as prosecutors tried to use testimony from at least 3 women that Hunter Biden was involved with to establish that he was a chronic drug user when he bought this firearm back in 2018. CBS Scott McFarland was inside the courtroom for the second day of testimony.
First Lady Jill Biden spent a 3rd day at the courthouse, again seated behind Hunter Biden.
Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air, the gunman opening fire with an automatic weapon outside the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. Here in France, the possible terror plot uncovered in Paris, just as world leaders arrive here to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And tonight here, America's World War II heroes and what they told me about their trip at 99 and 100 years old, their return to Normandy. First tonight, the terrifying scene outside the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. A gunman opening fire on soldiers and U.S. Embassy security. 5 other suspects in custody. What we're now learning about the attack and what was written across the suspect's vest. Arthur Raditz with late reporting. Tonight here in France, authorities investigating a possible terror plot. The suspect, authorities say, a former member of the Russian military, detonating a homemade bomb at a hotel near Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. President Biden arriving in France to honor World War II veterans here in Normandy. The president will speak about defending democracy around the world. He will meet with President Zelensky, and tomorrow he'll sit down for an exclusive interview with us. Tonight, back in the U.S., the major cities on the East Coast bracing for potential flash flooding. Storm concerns from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City. The race for president tonight, the breaking headline involving Donald Trump. His gun permit revoked because he's now a convicted felon. And the news coming in on the Georgia case put on hold indefinitely. Also tonight, Hunter Biden's gun trial, his ex-wife and ex-girlfriend taking the stand for the prosecution. American Amanda Knox back in Italy years later, hoping to clear her name for good. Instead, convicted of slander in an Italian court. Tonight, Boeing launching the Starliner spacecraft, its first ever crewed mission to the International Space Station. In New York City tonight, what's now happened to that plan to charge you $15 to drive into New York. And 80 years after they landed on the beaches of Normandy, America's World War II veterans. For more than 5 years now, we have been documenting their journey, their message to everyone at home watching tonight as they make their journey back.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, reporting tonight from Normandy, France.
And good evening tonight from Normandy. We are here to mark the history.
Stuff the British stole, Monday, June 17 on ABC and ABC iView. Today, in the witness box, the man accused of murdering 2 Victorian campers in 2020 gives evidence in his own trial. Also ahead, the New South Wales government to deliver a formal apology to people charged and convicted under historical laws that criminalised homosexuality. Greens leader Adam Bandt threatens legal action against the Attorney General over comments about the party's involvement in pro-Palestinian protests. And liftoff, Boeing Starliner capsule successfully launches 2 astronauts into space on its 3rd attempt. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. Greg Lynn is taking the stand to give evidence in his murder trial in the Victorian Supreme Court. He's accused of murdering campers Russell Hill and Carol Clay, who went missing in the state's high country in 2020. Mr. Lynn has pleaded not guilty to murder. Reporter Sasha Payne is at the Supreme Court in Melbourne and joins us now. Hi, Sasha. So what's Mr. Lynn told the court?
Good afternoon, Ros. Well, there's a huge amount of interest in today's evidence, as you can imagine. It's a packed courtroom, a packed public gallery. There's members of his family and also the family of the dead campers are also in court. He's the only witness who's been called by the defence, and today he's taken the court through his account of what happened on that night in March 2020. He denies murdering the campers, but says it was all a tragic accident the last few weeks. Mr. Lynn is expected to be the last witness to give his evidence before the jury retires to consider their verdict, Ros.
Thanks, Sasha. The New South Wales Premier Chris Minns will this afternoon formally apologise on behalf of the state government to people convicted of homosexual acts. The apology comes 40 years after the Wran government decriminalised homosexuality. Reporter Alexander Lewis is at State Parliament and joins us now. Alex, the Premier due to speak shortly.
Ros, the Premier is due to behind the words in terms of backing up this apology with passing some of these equality reforms, Ros.
Alex, thanks for the update. A warning, this story contains an image of an Indigenous person who's died and details some may find distressing. Queensland's Deputy State Coroner has been unable to make any definitive findings into the death of a woman whose remains were found at the bottom of Brisbane's Kangaroo Point Cliffs more than 5 years ago. Reporter Antonia O'Flaherty joins us now from Brisbane. Antonia, what's the court said?
Good afternoon. The Deputy State Coroner, Stephanie Gallagher, has said that she was unable to make any definitive finding into the death of Ms. Constance, and the family will not let go of their fight for justice for Ms. Watcho.
Antonia, thank you. The Federal Greens leader Adam Bandt has threatened legal action against the Attorney General over comments he made about the party's involvement in pro-Palestinian protests. Political reporter Evelyn Manfield joins us now from Parliament House. Good afternoon, Evelyn. What has Adam Bandt said?
The Greens leader says his lawyers have written to Attorney General Mark Dreyfus about comments which Mr Bant says were defamatory. Those comments were made in an to have a responsibility to respect the views of others.
Thanks, Evelyn. Violence has erupted at Israel's annual Jerusalem Day march, with some Jewish Israelis attacking Palestinians and journalists. Our Middle East correspondent Alison Horn reports from the Old City in Jerusalem.
I'm standing at the entrance of the Muslim quarter in the Old City of Jerusalem. Usually this is an area that would be teeming with Palestinians, but today they've all been moved out of this area to make way for thousands of far-right Israelis and Jews to march through the streets, marking Israel's capture of East Jerusalem in 1967. As the Palestinians.
Vladimir Putin has held a rare face-to-face meeting with international news agencies in St. Petersburg. The Russian president told journalists the deliveries of German tanks to Ukraine came as a shock. Germany recently joined the US in authorizing Ukraine to hit some targets on Russian soil with the long-range weapons they supply to Kyiv. Mr. Putin says the use of those weapons would mark a dangerous step and could further undermine international security. He's warned Russia could provide its own long-range missiles to others to strike Western targets.
For some reason, the West believes that Russia will never use nuclear weapons. If someone's actions threaten our sovereignty, we consider it possible to be fired into parts of Russia.
John, thank you. An appeals court in the US state of Georgia has paused the election interference case against former President Donald Trump. It's reviewing the ruling by a lower court judge, allowing lead prosecutor Fani Willis to remain on the case. Mr. Trump and other defendants argue the prosecutor should be removed because a romantic relationship she had with a special prosecutor created a conflict of interest. The former president is accused of illegally trying to overturn the 2020 election result in Georgia, which he denies. The ruling means there almost certainly won't be an outcome in the case before the November election. The UN Secretary General has called for a global ban on fossil fuel advertising, calling out the industry for enabling planetary destruction. In the speech to mark World Environment Day, Antonio Guterres warned that time was running out to keep global temperatures on target.
Temperatures in the Indian capital Delhi hit just shy of 50 degrees Celsius in recent days, the highest ever recorded. Meanwhile, parts of Brazil are still recovering from extensive floods caused by a deluge made twice as likely by climate change, say scientists. It is evidence, said the head of the UN today, that the world is playing Russian roulette with the climate.
Climate change.
To keep global temperatures on target.
Temperatures in the Indian capital Delhi hit just shy of 50.
On the case, Mr. Trump and other defendants argue the prosecutor should be removed because a romantic relationship she had with a special prosecutor created a conflict of interest. The former president is accused of illegally trying to overturn the 2020 election result in Georgia, which he denies. The ruling means there almost certainly won't be an outcome in the case before the November election. The UN Secretary General has called for a global ban on fossil fuel advertising, calling out the industry for enabling planetary destruction. In the speech to mark World Environment Day, Antonio Guterres warned that time was running out to keep global temperatures on target.
Temperatures in the Indian capital Delhi hit just shy.
Heavy rain is falling along the New South Wales south coast, with 150 millimetres recorded in parts of the Shoalhaven. A severe weather warning has been issued for the Illawarra and south coast as a low pressure system moves north towards Sydney. Reporter Romney Gilbert has more from Berry.
I'm standing here on the banks of Broughton Creek in Berry, where overnight this area saw more than 100 millimetres of rain fall. You can see beside me here the creek is flowing quickly, and where I'm currently standing, I wouldn't have been able to stand earlier. And there is, of course, a flood watch for the Shoalhaven River and the Clyde River there. So the message to community is to stay safe, stay inside and stay aware and alert. You can keep up to date at news.abc.net.au and on ABC iView. Here are the top stories on ABC News. Greg Lynn has begun giving evidence in his murder trial in the Victorian Supreme Court. The former Jetstar pilot has pleaded not guilty to murdering campers Russell Hill and Carol Clay in the High Country in 2020. Some of their families, as well as Mr. Lynn's wife and son, have attended the packed court. The 57-year-old has told the court he was truthful at all times in his police interview when he said the campers' deaths were both accidental. New South Wales has become the last Australian state to issue a formal apology to people convicted under historic laws that made homosexuality a crime. Premier Chris Minns is delivering the apology in the lower house, with Labor frontbencher Penny Sharp set to do the same in the upper house. It comes as the state marks 40 years since homosexuality was decriminalised. Greens leader Adam Bant has threatened legal action against the Attorney General over comments he made about the party's involvement in pro-Palestinian protests. Mr. Bant says he's written to Mark Dreyfus citing concerns that the statements in an interview on the ABC, which was outside parliamentary privilege, were defamatory. He says the remarks were unfounded and were spreading disinformation. And Boeing has successfully launched its Starliner capsule towards the International Space Station with 2 NASA astronauts on board after a number of aborted attempts. The company was originally the lead contractor for NASA's Commercial Crew program and was scheduled to begin flying crew to the ISS from 2018. Rival SpaceX has been sending astronauts to the station since 2020. Well, now on one of our top stories, we're taking you to New South Wales State Parliament, where Premier Chris Minns is formally apologising to people convicted.
To anticipate the future by understanding the present. We are with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. France 24, an alternative look at the news. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
World leaders gather in Normandy to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which led to the liberation of Western Europe in World War II. Thousands of Allied soldiers died on the beaches in the largest land, air and sea invasion in history.
Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is prepared to launch an intense operation against Iran-backed Hezbollah forces in Lebanon. Clashes have intensified in recent days, once again raising fears of the war in Gaza spilling across the region. And Vladimir Putin warns that Russia could arm other countries to strike Western targets. It comes after several of Ukraine's allies, including the US, gave Kiev the go-ahead to hit limited targets inside Russia. Putin said Moscow reserves the right to respond in kind. Good evening to you, wherever you're watching. Thanks for joining us here on the France 24 Night Watch. First up, world leaders are gathering in France to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day today, which led to the liberation of Western Europe and eventually the end of World War II. The Normandy landings brought together Allied forces in the largest land, air and sea invasion in history. On the 6th of June 1944, 1,200 planes, 5,000 ships and 160,000 troops invaded German-occupied France. Thousands of soldiers were killed on the beaches on the first day. European leaders will be among the visiting dignitaries along with US President Joe Biden, King Charles III and also Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. The city of Caen in Normandy recently launched a vast operation for its archives to gather personal accounts, photographs and other objects from that time of the Normandy invasion. For many survivors, it's a last chance to tell their stories. Emma Maxwell has this.
Valérie Rappeau is on her way to meet one of the last survivors of the Battle for Caen. This is the first time 95-year-old Geneviève Leroyer has told her story on the record. She was just 15 at the time of the landings, and like many others, she hid from the bombs in the nearby quarries.
We didn't know what was happening, but we could hear the bombs, the shells falling on Caen. One day, a shell exploded nearby, and a huge burning piece fell just in front of my foot. I was miraculously spared.
More than a third of Caen was destroyed.
I'm happy that it's resting here.
The testimonials of these last witnesses will now be kept safe for posterity.
Some of the survivors from the invasion of Normandy in 1944 speaking to us there. Next up, the Israeli army has confirmed it carried out a deadly strike on what it called a Hamas compound inside a UN school in central Gaza. The army said several terrorists were killed in a precision strike on the UNRWA facility in Nuseirat, which was reportedly housing displaced persons. Unconfirmed media reports said at least 27 people were killed. And Israel launched a new military offensive in the area in the past days, with Médecins Sans Frontières reporting at least 70 people killed since Tuesday. It comes as the latest international efforts to secure a truce and hostage release deal have resumed in Cairo. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, says Israel is prepared to launch what he called a very intense operation at the border with Lebanon. Once again, this has raised fears of a regional conflict. Since Israel launched its war in Gaza on the 7th of October, it's exchanged near-daily fire with Iran-backed Hezbollah. Those clashes have intensified in recent days, with more munitions hitting northern Israel, sparking bushfires. France 24's Eliza Herbert has the story.
On a visit to Israel's border with Lebanon, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered strong words. Displacement of civilians on both sides of the border.
Thousands of Israeli nationalists have marked Jerusalem Day by marching through the Old City in the annexed East. The date commemorates Israel's capture of that section of the city in 1967. It's home to the holiest site in Judaism, Temple Mount, which is known to Muslims as Al-Aqsa, the third holiest site in Islam. Tensions ran high on Wednesday as Israelis made their way through predominantly Arab neighborhoods, some shouting inflammatory slogans. In Czech Republic, 4 people have died after a train accident. Dozens more injured when an express train crashed head-on with a freight train in the city of Pardubice, about 100 kilometers east of the capital Prague. The accident happened around 11 p.m. local time. The train was carrying more than 300 passengers, many of them foreigners. President Vladimir Putin has warned that Russia could provide long-range weapons to strike Western targets. It comes as several of Ukraine's allies, including the US and Germany, gave Kiev the go-ahead to use their munitions to hit limited targets in Russia. Putin said that would signify the West's direct involvement in the war and said he reserved the right to respond in kind. He also reaffirmed Moscow's readiness to use nuclear weapons if it sees a threat to its sovereignty.
For some reason, they believe in the West, that Russia will never use it. We have our nuclear doctrine. Look at what is written there. If somebody's action threatens our sovereignty and territorial integrity, we consider it possible to use all means at our disposal.
Next up, Italy's Prime Minister says a contested migrant reception centre being built in Albania will be operational from August. Giorgia Meloni was speaking on a trip to northern Albania. Her deal with Tirana aims to curb migration to Italy. The project has become central to her campaign for European elections, which get underway this Thursday. Caroline Weyer has more.
An official visit with one goal, defending a controversial plan. Last November, Giorgia Meloni and Albania's Prime Minister signed a 5-year deal in which the Balkan country agreed to shelter up to 3,000 migrants each month while Italy processes their asylum claims. After visiting the 2 future facilities, Italian Prime Minister assured that the plan is moving forward.
We want to do things properly because if what we have envisioned here works, and it will work, then we will have inaugurated a completely new phase in managing the migration problem. The agreement could be replicable in many countries. It could become a part of the structural solution for the European Union.
The deal has drawn criticism from human rights activists. According to them, refugee protections could be compromised, a concern that Albanian Prime Minister doesn't share.
We have a chance to be more useful to Italy 2 or 3 times. So let's take this opportunity and do it with heart and with the conviction that the sea between Italy and Albania is not a space that divides us, but a space that has united us for thousands of years.
With asylum requests expected to take around a month to process, the number of migrants sent to Albania could reach up to 36,000 in a year, a number that worries some.
We were also refugees once. I was in Greece, and the Greeks were taking care of us with food and everything. Those who arrive here are just like us. I feel sorry for them. However, Albanians have no money to look after themselves or for looking after others.
As she was leaving, Giorgia Meloni was confronted by a centre-left Italian lawmaker who accuses her of politically exploiting the deal. This visit comes just days ahead of local and European Parliament elections, where migration is a top campaign issue.
Finally, shoppers in the UK may soon no longer be able to buy foie gras. The French delicacy is produced by force-feeding geese and ducks, but the Labour Party, seen as a likely winner of next month's general election, says it will ban any produce that involves the procedure. 200 tonnes of foie gras are imported into Britain every year. So, how do Brits feel about it? Take a look.
In the United Kingdom, geese and ducks lead a royal life. Force feeding has been banned since 2011. But things could go further. If it wins the July general election, the opposition Labour Party has promised to ban imports of the French delicacy. And 9 out of 10 British people are in favour.
I think it makes sense. I don't feel very strongly about having foie gras around.
I kind of support it, but I'm vegan. Like, you guys have never really had it, so I don't think anyone would really notice if it was banned, apart from, I guess, French people.
I eat it when I go to France. Here in England, I don't think I've ever seen it.
King Charles III has already banned foie gras at all royal residences.
And that is about it for now. Thanks for staying with us here on the France 24 Night Watch, and see you next time.
Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Russia's foreign minister arrives in Chad on the last leg of his tour of Africa. Sergei Lavrov promises more military support to Burkina Faso, Congo and others, whilst telling his hosts that Western partners want Russia's punishment more than Africa's peace. Also, South Korea's business relationship with Africa sprouts even more branches as more countries from the continent join its Rice Initiative off the back of a landmark conference welcoming dozens of African delegates. And it's one of the most unique and sought-after tastes in the world. Producers of Cameroon's Penda White Pepper have been battling for customers to not accept any substitutes because despite it being a protected brand, pretenders are still widely on sale at local markets. But first, Russia's foreign minister arrived in Chad on Wednesday after pledging to give more military.
This is Asia Now.
It's 11 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 8:30 in New Delhi and 10 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Paul Singh. At this hour, coalition politics return to India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets allies to form a new government, even as Congress-led opposition has yet to concede defeat. Israel intensified its Gaza offensive amid ceasefire talks. Humanitarian group Doctors Without Borders calls the violence apocalyptic as women and children make up the bulk of the casualties. Western arms to Ukraine prompts sharp warning from President Vladimir Putin. The Russian leader argues Moscow could provide other countries with similar weapons to strike the West. Coalition politics back in play in India after a decade of BJP dominance. Prime Minister Modi is meeting his allies in New Delhi, where he was chosen to lead the coalition as it prepares to form the next government. What's crucial to the BJP now, post-election, is two regional parties, TDP and JDU. They have emerged as kingmakers because BJP is short of the halfway mark.
There is going to be that sort of horseplay and trading. I don't see the opposition coming out of it too well, and the Congress and so on. But yes, I can see your point that that TDP and JDU, these parties, the two parties that are going to join Modi, are fickle, and therefore you have to look after them very well.
And we have more coverage on India's surprising election outcome, including this story and how the results could impact Southeast Asia. It's available on our website, cna.asia. A school run by the UN has been hit as Israel steps up its offensive in Gaza, even as talks to secure a ceasefire resume. The Hamas-run government says at least 27 people were killed and dozens injured at the school that was housing displaced people. The Israeli military confirmed it struck a UN school in the Nuseirat refugee camp early this morning. It posted this photo purportedly showing where Hamas terrorists were hiding. The IDF claims the school was being used as a base by the militants who took part in the October 7th attack on Israel. Elsewhere, casualties too. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is grappling with a pushback from the right-wing faction, which insists Hamas must be destroyed first. He could face further pressure. The European Union is seeking talks on an agreement that ties human rights to trade. It says it wants to press Israel on the situation in Gaza. Russian President Vladimir Putin has slammed the delivery of Western weapons to Ukraine. He wants that Moscow could do the same by supplying arms to other countries to attack Western targets, but he did not specify which countries Moscow could supply weapons to.
Мы думаем на тему о том, что если кто-то считает возможным поставлять такое оружие в зону боевых действий для нанесения ударов по нашей территории и создания проблем для нас, то почему у нас нет права поставлять наше оружие такого же класса в те регионы мира, где будут наноситься удары по чувствительным объектам тех стран, которые делают это в отношении России? То есть ответ может быть асимметричным.
Mr. Putin, who was speaking to reporters at an annual forum, singled out Berlin, saying when German-supplied tanks first appeared on Ukrainian soil, it provoked what he called a moral and ethical shock to Russia because of the legacy of World War II. But the main donor of arms in the defense of Ukraine has been the US, which in recent weeks gave the green light to Kyiv to use some weapons to strike targets inside Russia. Washington has supplied billions in aid.
Well, at the moment, President Joe Biden is in France on his way early Thursday to Normandy for these D-Day commemorations. And during this visit, he is promoting the idea that the US is a strong ally of Europe, a strong ally of NATO, and continues to defend democracy. And I think with the words we're going to hear from him in those events and the fact that he's due to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during his time in France and also next week at the G7 meetings in Italy, we can see what the US is most worried about. And that is the current status of the war in Ukraine. And in fact, the lack of progress really being made on the battlefield, and has been the case for many months. We can expect that Biden, according to the White House, will be speaking to Zelensky in detail about the current situation and going into plans for the future. The US saying, from Biden's perspective, it's that and the Ukraine war that are the chief concerns right now.
Today marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, arguably the most important battle in the Second World War. Many soldiers are no longer with us, but one 98-year-old veteran is soldiering on to bring the message of peace to the next generation.
The most powerful hopes the young ones will take to heart.
And your Asia business update is next, including increasing expectations for rate cuts in global central banks lift the sentiment in Asia markets ahead of a policy meeting by the European Central Bank. And later, Nvidia's rally to $1 trillion club is giving boost to Asian chip stocks. The price action is next.
In South Africa, it is a race against time. The ruling ANC party is seeking a coalition that will give it a majority in parliament. The spokesperson Malengi Bengu Mosiri told reporters there have been talks with other political parties.
The ANC has started engagements with political parties in the country. We have been meeting with all parties that are keen to contribute ideas on how we can collectively move our country forward to form a government that ensures national unity and stability in a country that continues the transformation of South Africa and safeguards our constitutional democracy.
There have been talks with the Democratic Alliance DA, the far-left Economic Freedom Fighters, and the other small parties. Shivala said the ANC had repeatedly reached out for the new MK party of former President Jacob Zuma for talks.
Our commitment to a national democratic society cannot be changed on the basis of the fact that we have not achieved an outright majority. In the conversations about who we're going to finally go into a coalition with, those will be the key principles that we consider, the kind of policies and the set of policies that those that we go into a government of national unity with will be considered.
Parliament must sit by June 16 to elect a president, with Ramaphosa seeking a second term, and an agreement of some sort needs to be in place for that to happen. More calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. Egypt and Cyprus have renewed calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza. Israel launches war in Gaza after attacks by Hamas killed about 1,200 Israelis on October 7. The Cyprus foreign minister said Tuesday that Israel's offensive on Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah was causing a potentially irreversible and catastrophic consequences.
The expansion of the military operations into Rafah, is creating potentially irreversible and catastrophic consequences, and it needs to stop.
Egypt is the only country aside from Israel that has a border with Gaza and has the above pressure to accept Palestinian refugees displaced by Israel. Rafah crossing was closed as it became an arena for military operations where fighters are engaging, and it was not appropriate in order to save the lives of truck drivers and people who work in the humanitarian sector to keep it as a way to access aid and humanitarians due to the targeting that they were going to be subjected to and the damage related to this military operation that they will have had to face. Egypt has decried Israelis' attacks on Rafah and the seizure of Philadelphia Corridor, a strategic corridor along its border with Gaza.
South Korean leader Yoon Suk-yeol vowed shared growth, sustainability and solidarity on the second and final day of the inaugural Korea-Africa Summit. Representatives from 48 African countries were in attendance. President Yoon announced during a business forum on Wednesday that his country will establish a mineral partnership with some nations on the continent. Africa's role has become more important due to the unpredictability in the global supply chain caused by geopolitical risks. I hope to establish key minerals partnership with African nations and expand mutually beneficial cooperation and resources through key mineral security partnership with countries that share the same values. State news agency Yonhap reported that African representatives agreed to launch a ministerial-level mineral dialogue to ensure a resilient supply chain of resources needed for key technologies. Minister of Foreign Affairs Cho Tae-yeol said Africa is a crucial partner for Korea in realizing its foreign policy aspirations.
The iconic pink house where Muhammad Ali spent his formative years dreaming of boxing greatness is now on the market. The two-bedroom, one-bedroom home located in Louisville was converted into a museum that offers a unique glimpse into the early life of the man hailed as the greatest.
It's really a historical landmark and has a placard in the front lawn to identify it as such. The property was Muhammad Ali's childhood home, and he lived there for 18 years, shared a bedroom with his sparring partner and brother, Rahman. And it is in that house that Muhammad Ali was encouraged to try boxing for the first time at the age of 12, and also won his gold medal and signed his first professional boxing career.
Ali's childhood home gained additional prominence in 2016 when hundreds of fans gathered there for an emotional send-off as his funeral procession passed by.
We've had a ton of interest in the properties, and obviously Muhammad Ali is a name and significant person that resonates throughout all of our American culture and through boxing culture, Black American culture, American Muslim culture, and we're hoping that one of these preservationist groups would be willing to come in and work with us to help shepherd it on to the next owner.
Muhammad Ali's legacy continues to inspire, and there is significant interest in preserving his childhood home as a cultural and historical landmark.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir. Good man. Have a good life.